So I don't know, every morning is a new day and new theme music. Yesterday I had my seatbelts on. I was hoping not to pop through the ceiling. This morning I can't tell whether to look for Pepto-Bismol or call my cardiologist. What is that, Mike?
Just some generic house music that I've
Some generic house music. All right. Well, welcome back to Law and Legitimacy.
It's YouTube approved. That's what I know. YouTube does this cool thing where they make a bunch of, androgynous tracks available to creators. So thanks, YouTube.
And so and they've already screened it for fair use, so we're not going to get
absolutely
sued for
no copyright issues here, my man.
Well, so we had a debate last night and query who won. Did anybody win? If you look at some of the reports on mainstream media, Nikki Haley won because when Vivek talked about her 3-inch heels, she said, no, they're 5-inch heels. They're ammunition. And she managed to call Vivek scum and get away with it on the debate stage. The topic of TikTok came up and Vivek said, it's odd that you should be hostile to TikTok when your adult daughter's on it. You don't put my daughter's name in your mouth. You're scum. And of course, the crowd liked it. Less reported on, though, was the more significant moment where Vivek took center stage and basically turned the tables on his interrogators and basically said one of the problems we have in this country is the mainstream media's control of the dialogue, of the debate. And, you guys were the people who sold us Russian collusion in 2016. You guys were the people who sold us the hoax about Hunter Biden's laptop as disinformation in 2020. And when Vivek turned the tables on them and asked them a question, silence ensued. We're not here to answer your questions. You're here to answer ours. And Vivek now famously called for the replacement of GOP Chairman Ronna McDaniel, noting that, hey, she took over, I think, in 2017. And have we won anything since then? Maybe it's time to get rid of loser of the half decade. And he offered to yield some of his time on the floor to Ronna, who was in the audience. Ronna, basically, he said, if you'd like to come up here and offer your resignation, I'll yield some of my time. Well, Ronna didn't. She was observed by at least one person in the audience to have called him, and I quote, a bleep hole, and vowed that he would not get one dime from the Republican Party. He made a great point. I mean, the best point he made, I'm responding to Dawn McNeil's comment, problem is RNC allowing these media to moderate. That's exactly right. He said, look, who should moderate this debate? Elon Musk, Tucker Carlson, and Joe Rogan. People would tune into that. And I think he's right. Because when I see the likes of who was the moderator last night, Mike?
There were 3 moderators. And I don't remember their names. Like what is it?
Was it Lester Holt?
Lester Holt was one of them. And then another female.
Yeah. So when I see Lester Holt, I feel like I'm being sold shoes that are half a size too short. Yeah, I could wear them and they'd pinch and they'd look good, and I would have the approval of the style squad. But I'd rather have my own shoes and do my own thing. So Vivek, I don't know what the polls suggest, if there was an exit poll or of some sort on the crowd reaction to the debate last night. Certainly, mainstream media declared Nikki Haley the winner and trashed Vivek. Tim Scott was sort of lost in the cosmos. DeSantis, according to press reports, did a better job than usual, but that's not saying much. That's like saying the corpse stunk a little less on a hot day. Just because somebody doped him up with perfume doesn't mean that he smells any less. So let's see what happens. I mean, did you get a chance to see any of the debate, Mike, or how did you follow it?
I didn't even. So I think I told you I didn't even know that it was going on until I popped open X for something unrelated. And I saw, some sort of passing mention about it.
Let's face it, you were on Pornhub and you said, if you want to see, and then you saw a flash, if you want to see the American people get screwed, take a look at the GOP debate. And at that moment, your interest changed.
Yeah.
Am I right?
GOP screws entire country was the title of that video, I think. I was actually making white bean chicken chili a little later at night than I wanted to. But
Who cooks white bean chicken chili after 8 o'clock?
Everybody is hungry now. Come on. Okay. And so I popped it open on TV and had it going. And I got to say, Vivek has that look in his eye. He just has that sort of, I guess, if we want to get, Rocky era movies, that eye of the tiger. There's something different about him, his energy, and
But
his.
is it unhinged though? I mean, that
Absolutely
seems to
not.
be the
Everything is very
whispering
controlled.
about
So what you're
Vivek.
reading about, Norm, because I take it that you did not have an opportunity to watch it live, which is
Well, I
part
had
of.
the opportunity. I just chose to sleep instead.
So I think that the issue that we have with the reporting on the debate is that the people debating against Vivek Ramaswamy, namely Nikki Haley, namely Ron DeSantis, namely Chris Christie, they are all funded by major donors, right? And to that end, these major donors are able to also influence the way that things are reported on. And the RNC, which we already know that Ronna McDaniel, she said that that the RNC won't give a single cent to Vivek, right? And that he's an asshole, etc. Whatever. The problem with not watching it is that you do lose the opportunity to witness in context someone as impressive and as different and a league above as Vivek. Ron DeSantis didn't have a bad showing.
Well,
Right?
so respond to severe conservatives' remark. I can't tell whether it's ironic or not. In a sane world, DeSantis would be president of the United States. Is that a joke?
I don't know. I think,
Respond to that. What's wrong with DeSantis? He's got the chops. He's a former governor, or he's a governor. He's been on the national leadership stage. I mean, he's stiff. He's sort of, he's sort of mausoleum-like in his demeanor. But what about the claim that in a sane world we'd elect him?
Well, I don't know that a sane world would elect Ron DeSantis. I think that in a world that was still dominated by sort of traditional party politics, a pre-Trump world is what severe conservative must be referring to. That DeSantis would certainly have the main line into that Republican nominee spot. But ultimately, I think that DeSantis has other issues. I think that his campaign is managed by a bunch of psychos. Right? They spend a lot of time teeth gnashing and going after people online with weird invective. He has not performed well, right? Comparatively, his branding is terrible. And ultimately, I think that there is no sense of humor, right? If you contrast Vivek with Ron DeSantis is right now, he can't take a joke. But maybe it's because it's not actually a joke. It's like people think that he wears heels to make himself smaller, right? They think that there are inserts in his cowboy boots. And then now we're analyzing his gait and the way that he walks, because it actually does appear that he's trying to make himself taller than he really is. And he's been called out for it. Rather than kind of leaning into anything and having a sense of humor, his brand is just totally, trying to light a fire to everything. By contrast, there's a popular TikToker who does an exact imitation of Vivek. And he loves it. He absolutely loves it. He's met with the guy, I think, like a couple of times now, and has promoted his channel. And it's brilliant way to sort of kung fu the environment we're in. Ron doesn't have that. And Vivek is appealing to the younger generation anyway. They're talking to two different audiences. And if we have
Mayhew's point, what about TC? Mayhew says, "Hey, look, the debates are a waste of time. None of them are getting the job." 90 miles away last night, Trump held a rally. And he is going to be the nominee. So were these folks merely running for vice president? And, is it going to be a Trump-Haley ticket?
I was reading Severe's comments. Say one more time.
90 miles from the debates last night, Trump held a rally. He didn't attend the debates because there's nothing to debate. So this is basically running for number 2. Is it going to be a Trump-Haley ticket?
Hell no. No, not a chance. Not a chance.
Well, we'll see. We'll see.
The only person on that stage that has any capacity to be in that seat is Vivek. If you don't see it yet, I can't help you. And Severe, going right to the key issues. He's not he's not the most conservative on that stage. He's not even the most conservative on speech. And we're here speaking every day. He's probably the least conservative on speech.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I didn't watch. I'm going to vote Democratic next year. I would vote for a pumpkin. I'm going to vote Republican next year. Excuse me. I would vote for a pumpkin in the Republican Party, simply as a means of registering my protest about the Department of Justice and its weaponization of the Justice Department. Obviously, I'm referring in part to the J6 phenomena, but I just think there's something wrong with Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland and Ron DeSantis sort of remind me of one another. They both seem to be on the specter, listening to a distant drummer that none of us can hear, and the metronome that beat is going out is just bang, 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 bang. There's no charisma there. I had a chance to visit D.C. There was a House Judiciary Committee subcommittee on the Bureau of Prisons, and I was asked to attend to be a visible presence on behalf of some of the J6 defendants, in particular Owen Schroyer and the Proud Boys. The subcommittee was chaired by Andy Biggs of Arizona. I got a chance to meet privately with him, and I can report that he's a charming guy, and he is very interested in what the Justice Department is doing, and he is very interested in whether the district attorney's office in Washington, rather, is abusing its authority by imposing more punitive conditions of confinement on J6 defendants. In fact, I'll be on InfoWars today at 12:30 with Alex Jones, talking about the committee hearing and talking about what's going on with J6 defendants in the prison system. What was particularly depressing about the committee hearing, and I think everybody should go to at least one congressional hearing in their life. You've all seen them on television, but to see one in person is somewhat different. They're so choreographed. You get the impression that the event itself is merely a smokescreen for events behind the scene. What happens is the chairman gives a 5-minute opening statement about what they're going to discuss. The ranking member, that is the senior member of the party not in power, gets 5 minutes to give a contrasting view. Then the witness who they're investigating gets a chance to talk to give a 5-minute prepared statement, and then each member of the panel who chooses to attend gets precisely 5 minutes to ask questions, and it's strictly monitored. And so some of them made good use of the time, some of them made horrible use of the time. One Democrat from Georgia, I don't recall her name, spoke for about 3 minutes before she mumbled out a question, and the only appropriate response to that question was yes. And so I didn't know what the point of it was. I thought that Matt Gaetz from Florida raised some pointed questions. He did mention Owen Schroyer, even if he mispronounced his last name and called him Owen Schrayer. But what was distressing to me is the Bureau of Prisons director, and I'm forgetting her name. She didn't know anything about Colette Peters. Reading it online. When asked about Owen Schroyer or some of the other J6 defendants, she said, "Well, I don't really know. I can't respond to your questions." Both Biggs and Gaetz pressed her for the opportunity to make a site visit to visit with some of the J6 defendants, and she couldn't commit to giving that. The most interesting part of the hearing, the one that caught me by surprise, the part that, well, something didn't catch me by surprise. What was the Bureau of Prisons position? We need more money to better do our job. Hey, you're appearing before Congress. Does anybody ever go to mom and dad and say, you should cut my allowance? You're giving me far too much. You can always wish for more. But the most interesting phenomena that I hadn't read about this anywhere, is apparently there's a problem at many facilities where colleagues or confederates of inmates are using drones to drop contraband at the perimeter of prison grounds. And so it may be that a drone will fly over the grounds and drop, drugs or whatever. And the guards are having a hard time keeping up with that. I found that incredibly intriguing. Justin Carter asks whether Peters was combative. She wasn't. There was no reason to be combative. It was sort of a love fest. She got away with the hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil response to every pointed question. I don't know enough about that to comment, Congressman. I'll be happy to get back to you on that. Or I'll be happy to get back to you about that, Congressman. That's an excellent point. And none of the congressmen were well enough prepared to really make her accountable. And part of that is you can't do much in 5 minutes. And so, I'm glad that I went down there. Glad I had the opportunity to meet with Representative Biggs. I got to meet with Representative Matt Gaetz' staff. I got to meet with the staff of House Speaker Mike Johnson. Johnson wasn't at the hearing, but the Oakdale facility where Owen Schroyer is detained was in his district. And I see online that Laura Loomer is agitating people to call Mike Johnson's office. and ask that he or a member of his staff pay a visit to Schroyer. I hope he does. Schroyer's entering his third week of his 60-day sentence. He's still being held incommunicado. I've not heard from him. The Bureau of Prisons has not given me any information.
Liberty Warrior asks over on Rumble, it's been hard to keep up. Is Biggs still in Atlanta? Joe Biggs, is he still incarcerated in Atlanta?
I believe he is. He certainly was 2 days ago. Biggs has been a pinball throughout the DOC. There's been I'm sure many of you will recall Fyodor Dostoevsky's account of being told he was going to be executed for his disloyalty to the Russian regime. So one day he was marched out of the prison yards, blindfolded, and the troop was aligned against him. And the command, ready, aim, fire had begun when suddenly a reprieve was announced. Dostoevsky thought he was going to die. And that moment changed his life. Historians debate whether the Tsar actually had ever had any real intention to execute him. Many people think that it was just done as a psychological way of breaking Dostoevsky to take him to death's door and then make him grateful to the Tsar for commuting his death sentence. In the Biggs case, and in the Proud Boys case, the guys have been told on more than one occasion, at least 2, possibly 3, to get their gear together, pack up, get ready to go. They're loaded out into a bus. They sit in the bus for a while, and then they're brought back into the prison. The consequence, however, is they've had to pack their stuff. They've had to give a lot of stuff away. A lot of their stuff has been lost or mislaid. And then they sit back in the same institution wondering where they're going to end up. The real tragedy in the Proud Boys case is that while the Bureau of Prisons initially scored them as low-risk detainees entitled to the relative ease of a minimum security facility, perhaps a camp, the Justice Department insisted that they be classified as medium security risks, and they are. So now they're in penitentiaries. The Bureau of Prisons has also neglected to follow the judge's recommendation that each of the men be held close to their home. Biggs has a young daughter in Florida. He'd like to, she is the world to him. And, you're telling me that the Bureau of Prisons couldn't find a place close to his daughter to make it convenient for her to have a relationship with her. They had to stick him in Atlanta, one of the most difficult institutions in the United States. While taking Biggs from one institution to another, they used so-called box cuffs on him, keeping him handcuffed for at least 16 hours one day, such that he lost feeling and circulation in his hands. There may be permanent neuropathy. We really don't know yet. These 1,001 small ways to mess with a person are designed to break their will and to demonstrate the institution's total control over them. And the result is that the dependent is supposed to be grateful for what the rest of us take for granted, the ordinary and exchange of minimal civility between strangers. I won't go so far as some and say that the Bureau of Prison is torturing these guys, but I will say they're abusing them at the margins, and they're abusing them at the margins in a way that will defy legal redress. And so those of you who care about the Proud Boys, tomorrow we'll post their destination. I would encourage you to write to them and to let them know of your support, because the Bureau of Prisons keeps track of who gets mail. In Owen's case, one of the guards told him after just 1 week that they were going to go out and buy a special wheelbarrow to bring him his mail. The only way, you can't hold these people accountable in courts. Qualified immunity and the various legal doctrines that shield them from immunity for uncivil behavior will keep them from ever being brought into a courtroom. But you can let them know the American public is watching, and you need to watch. So I'm encouraging each of you to drop these folks a line. So that's my report on the trip to DC. Well, would I do it again? I suppose. I mean, I'm glad I went. I had an enormous flash of insight, well, for me, probably obvious to you, about the importance of personalities, in the institution. The Speaker of the House has the ability to set the agenda, and the energy that exists in that building is focused on the decisions of House leadership. And it made me appreciate more what politicians do. I also came away with the impression that congressmen may work harder than trial lawyers. I thought we were the hardest working fools on the face of the earth. But when I saw what these guys go through in a day, I was stunned. Quick bit of humor. I had a fellow, Ivan Rickland, leading me around, showing me the ropes since I didn't know anybody there. And so at one point we're waiting to get on an elevator to go from one floor to another. And I see this elevator members only. And Ivan says, come on. I said, we're not members. He said, yeah, we pay for it. So we get on the elevator and we go up a couple floors. And as we're getting off, some congressman and his staff gave me the evil eyeball. And somebody muttered something about membership. And I said, hi, I'm Norm Pettis. I represent the state of chaos. And that shut him up. That shut him up. But anyhow, that's enough on that. Minnesota, interesting ruling in Grau versus the Minnesota Secretary of State. This is one of those 14th Amendment Section 3 claims that the Secretary of State is obliged to keep Donald Trump off any electoral slate, whether it be a primary or general election. And the Minnesota Supreme Court bounced the case involving Trump's name on the primaries. It concluded that a primary is an internal party election to serve internal party purposes. And therefore, if the party decides to place Mr. Trump on the ballot, on this internal ballot, there's nothing a regular Minnesotan can say about that. Significantly, the court held that the private parties had standing. That is, they had the right to bring a suit. It also claimed the suit was ripe. That is, it was ready to be decided, and there was a justiciable claim there. In other words, a claim that the court could decide meaningfully. What the court did not say, however, and this is what initially I thought it had, and pays to read the decisions, pays not just the headlines.
This is one of the issues with headlines kind of doing a lot of the heavy lifting here. Because you and I agreed before the stream started that this was a little disappointing because it didn't do nearly enough, or it didn't go as far as we thought it actually went. So the posture of the order is such that the petitioner sought to preclude Trump's name from appearing on the general election ballot. And the court effectively punted by saying that issue was not ripe because Trump had not been nominated by the party to represent the Republican Party on the general election ballot as of yet. So for that reason, it couldn't rule on that, and it refused to rule on that.
Did you see anything in the decision, Mike, that led you to suspect what Minnesota will do should Trump be the Republican nominee? What's that court likely to do?
So here's I'll read a paragraph from early in the order, which made me a little uneasy. Quote, "We conclude that petitioners have standing and that their claims are ripe as to the issue of whether former President Trump should be excluded from the 2024 Republican presidential nomination primary. We reach a different conclusion regarding petitioners' claim that it would be error for the Secretary of State to place former President Trump's name on the ballot for the 2024 general election ballot. That claim is neither ripe nor is it, quote, about to occur as Section 204B 44A requires." That to me, Norm, means simply that we will come back to this if and when he is nominated by the party, right? And it's almost an invitation to the petitioners to do this yet again. I went and looked at the case itself and the filings, and I'll see if I can find them again here. Here they are. So I'll share the tab that I've got open. This gives you the procedural timeline, Norm, from when the case originated. So September 12th is when this case originated. And if we open the petition, I just want to show our viewers here just how robust of a petition this is. 84 pages, and take a look at what the petitioners are alleging in this petition, right? That, the January 6, 2021 insurrection, the two demonstrations, Trump's preparations as the demonstrations began, the increasingly apocalyptic demonstration at the Ellipse, insurrectionists prepared for battle at the Capitol, Trump directed supporters to march on the Capitol, intimidate Pence in Congress. They are making the case that he's an insurrectionist. They're not leaving this to an issue, and I guess it didn't actually show up on the screen here. Let me show this. So just to review here, look at these. Trump's preparations as the demonstrations began, the increasingly apocalyptic demonstration at the Ellipse, insurrectionists prepared for battle at the Capitol, right? They're making the substantive case, Norm, here in Minnesota, and I'm sure it's this way in many of the other states, including Colorado. But in this petition, it's 80 plus pages, and they are making substantive arguments that he is an insurrectionist, right? They're asking the court to conclude that he's an insurrectionist, and as such, application of the law as drafted should preclude him from appearing on the ballot.
Well, that's the point of the law review article that was published earlier in the year, and that the authors contended, Paulson and Company, that state officials who'd sworn a duty to uphold the Constitution had a duty to keep a person who was involved in insurrection or offering aid and comfort to insurrectionists from appearing on a ballot for federal office. The question that was begged there is, who makes that determination, by what legal standard, and what is the definition of the terms? And Paulson and Company tried to argue in their article that these terms are self-defining in much the same way that the age qualification is. So, Mike, you're too young to be president, wise though you are, and great though you'd be as a leader. You've got to be at the ripe old age of 35 to hit that threshold. So you appear and try to put your name on the ballot. You put your date of birth down, boom, you're done. But who makes the decision? And so, if you actually give some thought to it, a matter of how old each of us is really steeped in exceptions to the hearsay rule. Mike doesn't know his date of birth. He wasn't cognizant of it. What he knows is what others told him. And what we have are public records that reflect the date of birth, a hospital birth certificate, and so forth. And so as a convention, we accept those certified records as an exception to the hearsay rule, and no one challenges what very rarely is a person challenged when they make a declaration as to their date of birth. That's a simpler question, but it does raise thorny questions of evidence. In fact, let me tell you a humorous, it's not a comic story, but it's a courtroom story. We once had a case where a man was accused of sexually assaulting a minor. And so the question was going to be, how was the jury going to determine that this young woman, who apparently was 15 at the time of the acts, was that age? She certainly looked older in the photos that we had. And so we prepared to challenge her testimony about her age on hearsay grounds. The objection would be objection foundation hearsay. She has no independent knowledge or reliable knowledge of her date of birth. What her date of birth reflects is what was told by others. And we did a little research on that. We didn't know what the government would do. On its exhibit list, it did not have a certified copy of her birth certificate listed. So we thought, this could be promising. They amended the witness list just before trial, undoubtedly reading our minds with the certified copy of the business record, or of the public record of her birth certificate, and that's a known exception to the hearsay rule, so it moved that issue out. By contrast, what is an insurrection? What does it mean to provide aid and comfort to an insurrectionist? Those are difficult questions, and candidly, they come close to what I would think of as political questions within the meaning of the law. And it's not clear to me that we want state officials making spot judgments from their desk when evaluating paperwork about the meaning of January 6th. I tried the Proud Boys case. I've been involved in the defense of other people present on the grounds on January 6th. It's by no means clear to me that this was anything other than a riot. And that the gloss that has been placed upon it as an attempted coup, as an insurrection, that's really done for political purposes. And nowhere are those political purposes more evident than in the attempt to keep Donald Trump off the ballot. So were I a justice of the Minnesota Supreme Court or some other Supreme Court, I might punt this action, saying that it's non-justiciable, meaning that it's barred by application to the so-called political question doctrine, that the meaning of that event is by no means clear, and that there would need to be some independent foundation, much like the certified record of a birth certificate declaring when a person was born. There'd need to be some independent process that declared or found after an evidentiary hearing, or found by some discernible standard, that Trump was part of an insurrection or aided and comforted insurrectionists. Otherwise, we're giving every state official involved in the electoral process the ability to interpret that event through their biases and preferences. And those who are never Trumpers are going to call it insurrection every time. And I think that's troubling. And so to me, Mike, that was the disappointing thing about the Minnesota Supreme Court ruling. I wanted to see them grapple with that issue. And they seem to punt it, avoiding it and pushing it down the road for later, or probably early next year.
Yeah, and so I do expect that this will be back, and we'll be looking more at the original petition Man, it's if you have some extra time this weekend, anybody, you can go and read the original petition.
Yeah, you've got my mind. You know, it reminds me of the House J6 committee report, which went well beyond the evidence that was admitted at the trial, but reached political conclusions about what went on. I mean, you know, Trump has a very viable defense to the J6 prosecution, and that is that he was the chief executive of the United States of America at that point, making political judgments, and as a result is immune from suit. Are we going to say that the chief executive officer of the United States was engaged in insurrection against himself? I mean, you know, at some level, this all becomes a little bit absurd. And I gather we're going to have a front row seat on this absurd theater in the 2024 election.
So we can, there is I guess a group of attorneys here from freespeechforpeople.org. I've never seen this before. So it looks like they're out of Newton, Massachusetts. Norm, I don't know if you can see this. These are the counsel for the petitioners. So be interesting to actually see and figure out the history of that organization.
Yeah, well, we'll take a look at it. There'll be time, God knows. So, well, you know, we've talked our way through a half an hour of your life. Thanks for listening. We ran long yesterday with Ron Coleman. We won't do it again today. I hope you all enjoyed the discussion with Coleman. I was talking with Mike earlier today. I wasn't sure where we were going yesterday. I knew I wanted to have the discussion because I'm troubled by anti-Semitism and its emergence in our world right now. And I trust Ron as a reliable legal and moral guide. Take a look at the discussion yesterday. I'd appreciate hearing from you and your feedback on it. Scary times, scary world. I think it's important to stand up for civilized value. And as far as I'm concerned, Ron Coleman is one of the ambassadors of civilization.
I love the discussion. I think that I told you it's like getting a diesel engine started up, right? Takes a second, but then once it gets cranked, it's very difficult to stop. That tends to be the rule of the road with respect to our discussions with Ron. Ron's been on too many times now for me to really remember. But every time it's, sort of a slow build and then all of a sudden this crescendo of really productive discourse. I think yesterday we were getting to a point when we started to bring in the element of social media, the issues that we're seeing being propped up on campuses, the issue of the First Amendment, campus speech, hate speech, and these things. And then we saw more of it last night with the debates, Norm, with the specific question to the candidates about TikTok and what to do with TikTok. These things are all interrelated, in my opinion. This is a complex issue, but nonetheless, I thought that what we were able to get done in the 50 minutes that we had with Ron was productive. And I think we'll do it again, most certainly. I want to give a shout out to Hans. Happy birthday to your son. Hans said he's just, his son is turning 16 today and he's glad not to be taxi driver anymore. So happy birthday to the young man.
Yeah, happy birthday, Hans. Happy birthday to your son, I should say. And happy worry day to you. You may not be a chauffeur, but now you'll sit back wondering, when is he coming home? He said he'd be home at 10. It's 10:05, 10:06, 10:07. At what point do I worry and call the police without embarrassing my son, or more to the point, myself? Parenthood is a world of worry. Those of you who've endured it know. And Hans, you're ready to enter a new chapter of worrydom. Happy birthday.
Lawyer Will says free speech for people sounds like George Costanza's fake charity.
Hey, Lawyer Will, long time no hear.
That's awesome. We'll be back tomorrow, 8 a.m. And then we're here every day, Monday through Friday, right here on Rumble, right here on X at LawPod. Please give us a follow and hit the notification bell. We'll be live there as well as YouTube. And then obviously we're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Overcast, wherever you find premium podcasts, as I'm going to start calling this one. We really appreciate everyone in the chat, especially. Thank you all for involving yourselves and exchanging words and ideas. I think that one thing we definitely need to prioritize is hearing ourselves say things. We are in a weird moment, I think, Norm, where people are constantly consuming information, but rarely are allowing themselves the space to say it out loud and to arrange their thoughts in a manner that reflects what they actually think. So whether we did a perfect job of the discussion with Ron yesterday, or whether our brief exchanges here over Vivek or Ron DeSantis, I think it's important that we stop stop abusing ourselves with this notion that somebody's going to think ill of us. Let's get over that. Get over the essence of shame. We got a job to do. Like I said yesterday, we need to demand more of our young people, and I think that that's what I'm starting to realize about myself, that I care a lot about, is engaging our young people and getting them to think more of themselves individually than they have to right now, thinking of the world as a collective set of problems that they are responsible for. So anyway, Norm, I will see you tomorrow.
You will. Be well, everybody. Stay safe.